Dark Souls obviously meant a lot for gaming. I mean, for a long time we had to deal with game articles that would say that X is the Dark Souls of Y, and all of that was kind of frustrating. But seriously, it did kick off a trend. It did change how a lot of people thought about combat design and approaches to difficulty in gaming, stuff like that. All fascinating. With Elden Ring, well, we have just seen some flabbergasting sales numbers.
Yeah, I mean, so Dark Souls 1 sold 1.5 million copies by November. It came out in September. That was before its PC release later this year, so it still exploded. It exploded later, but it still sold 1.5 million. Elden Ring's almost done 10 times that in less time.
It's mad. Elden Ring has sold 1 million copies in Japan. It has sold 12 million units worldwide.
12 million? That's more than Ghost of Tsushima.
And just like that.
Just like that, yeah. Took Ghost of Tsushima like a year.
How long did it take? What's Horizon Zero Dawn at
Horizon
now?
Zero Dawn,
20?
it's sold over 20 million copies, and that game is now 5 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
This is like Call of Duty numbers.
This is below Call of Duty numbers, but not all that far below. This is the biggest new IP since The Division. This is the biggest new release in the UK since Red Dead Redemption 2. 12 million sales.
And this is not a hyper smooth, hyper easy to pick up and... I mean, it is easy to pick up and play. It's Souls-like combat, so of course, like, you can just get stuck in. But, you know, dark fantasy. It's not what you think of when you think of a typical blockbuster. No, which makes me so happy that it has done those numbers.
Yeah, this is literally outside of George R.R. Martin's inclusion in the marketing, this is an anti-blockbuster in every way.
Yeah, and look how it's done.
Yep.
So that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Now there are a few little points of texture. So brutally unfinished content.
Yep. So there's a load of quest chains just aren't done. By the time you finish the game, you're like, well, okay, well those NPCs didn't finish their quests. That's interesting. You sometimes think, oh, did I miss something? But people have found no, it's just not there. The game definitely like narrows down pretty hard towards the end, and you can tell some of that is we need to release this game now where we don't have time to capitalize on what we could do. We have to release it. Obviously the PC performance and the porting, terrible job there. The stuttering is awful experience on PC, as the early Steam reviews completely proven. And the anti-cheat's lazy and doesn't really work that well. Just shits all over the modding community and doesn't stop serious hackers. But none of that matters.
Yeah, because ultimately it's that essence of a game.
Yep.
Turns out it's the essence of a game rather than the polish of the game in many cases, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, even think of a game like, say, Vampire Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'm playing that a lot right now, so I'm going to bring that up. But is that the most polished game ever?
Not at all.
No, like all of the UX could be juiced so much more.
Yeah.
The effects, all of that stuff. But the essence, the core of it, is what it needs to be, and that's why it's been so successful. If it had all of the polish and all of the bing bing wahoo and all of the excellent stuff, but did not have that essence, it would not have done as well. And that's like the really big lesson. So ultimately, it's like with Elden Ring, you know, you could maybe say, oh, overall, objectively, it's a 7.5 or an 8, but it doesn't matter because people don't buy a game 7 out of 10. They either do or don't.
Yeah.
The essence of this game is enough to mean that people do. It's that whole thing of, you know, a game is like, you know, it's like almost objectively a 7 out of 10, but to me it's a 10 out of 10.
Well, Stranger Paradise, hello.
There we go. But it's like Elden Ring is that to so many. And,
I mean, that's,
I mean, I've only played it for like an hour and a bit now. I mean, obviously I'm fucking transfixed.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, it's that thing where ultimately to me it's because it provides an experience no other game in the market does. That's why the word of mouth hitting so hard. That's why it's got 96 on Metacritic. That's why it's sold 12 million sales. Because people are like, people are getting their hands on the product and going, oh my, holy shit, this is transcendental. This is something I didn't know I wanted. And that's why they're just going, please, everyone I know, buy this game. That's fundamentally why all other stuff doesn't matter. And that's a thing where everyone is paying attention to this now. 12 million sales on a new IP. Obviously, you laugh at new IP. What do you mean? It's a Souls game, but they just give it a different name. But it is, you know, literally a new IP. But it breaks all the rules. Like, you know, there's no way Sony would ever do anything like this to try and get new IP off the ground. They go with the market-tested, broad appeal stuff. They went for The Last of Us. They went with the Last of Us, just an HBO show, really well executed in game form. Obviously, that's a bit reductive, but it was. You get the feel. Yeah, same with Horizon Zero Dawn. You're like, yeah, this is kind of Hollywoody in a way. Obviously, made by Guerrilla, so they're not actually Americans, but it feels that way. Ghost of Tsushima, it's kind of similar enough, but this just breaks all the existing rules. But it succeeded, so.
Yeah, it turns out it's the essence of the game that matters the most, and you can spend, if you don't have as strong an essence, you can spend a hell of a lot of money to polish things up, do all of that, market the shit out of it. But evidently with Elden Ring, it's like the shot landed where it needed to go.
Yeah,
and there's another good example of this, Tunic.
Yeah.
So Tunic came out recently, loads of great reviews, basically feeling like an old Zelda game, an old Zelda game in a way where you're actually exploring and you're not just, checkboxing. In the same way that we talked about Link to the Past. And imagine if Link to the Past had a quest objective panel on it. It would ruin the game.
I mean, Link to the Past, an interesting one, because I think it was a Game Informer review, might have been another one, but the tagline for the review ends with Tunic is a success, or no, Tunic is a Link to the Past, but lower caps, so trying to use the literal Link to the Past because the past era of games, and you're like, cute, very cute.
Nice one. Yeah, that's fun. So, I mean, that's just another really good example of some of these principles at play, which we like to see. Certainly, it's weird, there's so many of the modern, very objective list, very, goopy gamer brain, make number go up, this is how you do the, go. Here's like your just very clear list of objectives. I think that's actually... I think there's maybe some research into this. I know certainly Dr. K has spoken to it.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea that kind of can risk rotting your executive function.
Oh, yeah.
And when I think of a game like Link to the Past, like Elden Ring, those seem like games that are good for your executive function.
Oh, yeah.
Because you actually really have to think.
Yeah, you pay attention, you think. That's the thing that's why I think a lot of these games will be hard to people. That's why I think it'll be real difficult to... If you've been only been playing like Assassin's Creed Unguided mode for years, and you've only been playing the Horizon, the Assassin's Creed and stuff like that, if you pick up Tunic, you'll probably be like, what am I doing? Because, I mean, obviously it was, I think it was a Destructoid review by, I can't remember her name now, but it was like a pretty in-depth review of like, oh, here's what we're doing. Here's, like, I had my notebook. Unraveling the game's final riddle was a huge monumental moment. And that was because it was earned, because it was unraveled themselves. It wasn't like, there was someone talking about this, and it was to do with the abstraction of player skill in game design. And so much of like the player skill is in games is like abstracted away by stats and levels.
Yeah.
So you don't get better, your character levels up, and then you feel a bit better, but you're not. Puzzles have a lot of the same thing going on for like the problem solving and doing stuff as like a hero in the world.
Oh, Water Temple.
Yeah, so then that's all of your skill, all of your ability to problem solve is being abstracted away by these mechanics, by the fact that it's being guided to. So you feel like you're doing well, but you're actually not. So you go in, you actually have to think, you actually have to solve problems, you have to pay attention to the world. Like, a great example of this is tracking in Horizon Zero Dawn or Ghost of Tsushima. Horizon Zero Dawn puts a big purple glow whenever you track footprints with your focus. And Ghost of Tsushima doesn't do that, but the footprints are really, really very obvious. And every time I see them, I'm like, man, is there a game where you actually have to track animals and enemies? That should be really hard to do. Obviously visually as well, because you need the detail for like footsteps and grass and stuff like that. But it's like, you're not actually doing any of that. You're not solving that problem. The game is pretending like you are.
Yeah.
And that's the problem where it's going to be hard to go back to actually that executive function thing of, actually making decisions, actually problem solving, as opposed to feeling like you are, but you're not.
Yeah, it's an interesting part of how we design games, I guess. For some other trends, though, because Souls-like, that's obviously a trend. We saw how that impacted combat systems in games. In the same way, the Arkham games also kicked off a similar trend in combat systems. Mm-hmm. They're good examples, right? Ratchet and Clank 3 had multiplayer. Remember that?
It was good, but still.
Yeah, it all got shoehorned in. Mm-hmm. Regenerative health just appeared. Everything turned into a brown hallway military shooter. Then the RPGification of everything because, just put stats and gear in game. Now everything's a treadmill. Players will play forever, and you can sell ways to make that faster.
Yeah, straight up. Hang on. People feel happy whenever they level up. Have them always level up. was exactly their thinking.
Yeah, so we've got, Dragon Age moving from CRPG to like MMO light.
Yeah.
We've got Dead Space being utterly destroyed. We've got Assassin's Creed turning into a, hey, you're an assassin, to a historical, numbersy RPG questathon objective list game. And then Far Cry 3 turning into Far Cry 3 again and again and again and again. And they still have not innovated in that series.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, like, none of this is inherently bad. It's just, here's the trend, here's what people are copying, here's the, like, almost in the way that, certain eras had certain styles of paintings. Now we have, like, very compressed eras of video game development where every game has these things. And now Elden Ring could very well be kicking off a different era of, hang on, are we making games right as a unified game designer community who all talk to each other?
So if there was a Darksiders 4, we wonder what it would look like. And that's just because Darksiders 1 was like, edgy 3D Zelda, right? With the simple combat, dungeons, sort of small, sort of linear-ish world. Yeah. Darksiders 2 came out 2 years later. That was a hack and slash action RPG. Not to be confused with the ARPG.
Yes.
And then, of course, Darksiders 3 in the PS4, which I only learned today, has a Souls-like combat system.
Oh, yeah. It's because obviously Darksiders was just straight-up Zelda action combat, where, you fight a couple enemies, nothing particularly too difficult. Darksiders 2 was, oh, yeah, people are satisfied with killing loads of things, and you're playing death, so we'll give you, like, 2 scythes, or maybe you'll upgrade your gear, get your legendary scythes eventually, and just shred through loads of dudes. And then Darksiders 3 is like, Souls games are hot now, so here's Fury, and you have to dodge roll through massive boss attacks that'll 1 or 2 shot you. And I think it's actually a reasonably okay version of it, but it's like this one series tracks every trend. Not every trend, because it was like 2010, 2012, and 2018. But it's like, you can just see they went, what's popular, make that. I mean, I'm sure they had ideas for why they were doing it. I had interesting enough examples of it, but it was just, Darksiders is this is how video games evolved in one series. And it's really fun to think about.
Yeah, and then there's like what Dark Souls directly inspired. And like this is not even a complete list. We've got Jedi Fallen Order, Code Vein, Lords of the Fallen, The Surge 2.
Yep.
Neo 2, Stranger of Paradise, and then for the indies, Hollow Knight, Titan Soul, Death's Door, Death's Gambit, Salt and Sacrifice, Blasphemous, Mortal Shell.
Yep, those are
there's more.
Yeah, those are the games that I picked out that were very close to Souls-like, not including things that like just borrow the pick up your fallen when you die you lose your currency, pick it up again. Just like these are the
Maw in World of Warcraft.
Exactly.
Best Souls-like game ever made.
Yeah, so it's like these are the games that are actually Souls-like, as opposed to they've borrowed a little bit, and Dark Souls didn't even sell 12 million copies in a couple weeks. So some of it was like cynical, we'll make a Souls game from executives and stuff like that. But I imagine a lot of this was just people played Souls like went, oh my god, this combat's really good. Oh, this is really satisfying. Maybe we'll do that. Obviously that worked super well for a lot of these indies.
Yeah.
Less so for some, because I think a couple of them weren't great.
And now I'm more thinking maybe less of that this time around with Elden Ring, but perhaps Elden Ring will maybe embolden designers, maybe embolden some executives, that they don't need to do the things they think they need to do because the gamers aren't smart enough to play the games.
Yep.
In a way, that would really be my hope. So if we kind of think about what could happen next based on this game, perhaps setting somewhat of a trend. Well, world size. Could we be getting gigantic worlds? And then one of the things that Elden Ring does super successfully is it doesn't give you a full map with Fog of War. It gives you a very small map that expands as you explore. So you never really know where the edges of the map are, which makes it genuinely feel like you're exploring a new land. Then, the lack of quest markers, map markers, things like that. Maybe if you, in like an old MMO, get some quest text, you're like, oh, take the north road from this town and look to the west. And that would be how you would do something. You would literally do those actions and you would feel in the world. And then, of course, because those are numbers games and everyone has a goopy gamer brain that wants the numbers to go up fast, we then get some add-ons and in a way we ruin the games for ourselves. We enjoy the games more because we're achieving our goals, but that's just because our goals have replaced our intrinsic motivation to do these quests and explore the world.
Yeah, because I mean, this is going to sound a bit preachy and rough, but can you trust yourself to do the thing that's best for you? Will you find yourself ignoring what's long-term satisfying versus what's short-term? That's what a lot of MMO kind of stuff, that's what a lot of gameplay comes down to, where it's like, if I spent 6 hours figuring this out, would I feel amazing? Yes. But I kind of want the trophy, so I'm going to look it up.
If I perfectly reverse seared the fillet steak that I have in my fridge and did all of those things, would I feel more satisfied than getting the takeout that I got last night? Yes. Yeah. I think there are a lot of things where, like, can I really be trusted to do what's best for me? What is best for my own enjoyment? Like, we can't just treat video games like they're a completely separate part to real life. Yeah. I think about doing that for making dinner or just any other thing in my life. How often will I go for the version of that that's using Quest Helper with an objective list?
Yeah.
It's an interesting little thing to puzzle through.
Yep, definitely.
And, perhaps there'll be people who maybe Elden Ring will be a little bit of a wake-up call for them. Maybe they'll realize a few things. Then, of course, there's the difficulty element of Elden Ring, the build diversity element of Elden Ring, and how essentially build diversity is there in lieu of difficulty modes.
It's there in lieu of difficulty modes, but it's also there to aid the fantasy of a character, which is a point we have a little bit later on for the actual RPG feeling of Elden Ring, which is like, that build diversity isn't just, here's interesting gameplay ways to approach this puzzle. It is that, but it's so much more at the same time.
Yeah. And then what's interesting is, so many games have got a hard mode, the hardcore mode. They have, Assassin's Creed. You can play that guided or unguided.
Yeah, exploration mode, yeah.
Who plays it unguided?
I don't know
what is up, because the game certainly is dangling the option of, oh, hey, you can just turn this on in front of you.
Yeah, that's the thing where exploration's an optional mode. Do you want to make this harder for yourself? Are you going to click that? I mean, some might, but most people won't, which means most people are going to be railroaded to the experience that's the guided one, which is the easier one. It's the one that doesn't have these challenges that they'll feel satisfied for overcoming. And I will say, I did a little bit of research on it. A lot of people aren't super happy with the exploration mode because it's there, but it's also undercut by, I think it was Odyssey and having Icarus. So the eagle that just point things out for you, or like the sight. So it makes it a little bit too easy. And it's like, obviously I saw the designer talking on Twitter about how much that's there, and they do design for that to be possible, but it's not the default experience. Yeah, which is the case of if you put the fun game as the hard mode, people aren't going to click hard mode. And
it also impacts what they develop.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to go in the guided mode, then that's the thing you're going to be developing as the primary experience. And even at a fundamental level, you're splitting your efforts between two things, which in a way are different designs.
Yeah, and that's why people have always had that conversation about the difficulty in Souls. You're like, would this be more accessible for more people with an easy mode? Yes. Would that take away developer time? Yes. Is that worth it? A lot of people are putting their money on no.
Yeah. So what could they take from Elden Ring that could work? We've kind of got two broad ideas. The first is that people are hungry for the actual, RPG feeling. Yeah. With existing game mechanics that they know. Not RPG elements that distract from existing mechanics. Yeah, so to put a little bit of flavor on this, I'm mostly thinking the Elden Ring is obviously Souls combat. It's obviously kind of actiony combat stuff with the dodge button, Darksiders 3 is that combat, but with none of the RPG whatsoever, because you're playing and not really very customizable. It is a little bit in gameplay sense, but it's gameplay design customizable, not role playing or character feel. And you're playing Fury, so it's just one character. So it's like Elden Ring has all of the RPG feeling of you can play your own character, you have your own story as you're going through, not you the person, but your character is unique to you or close enough to it. Whereas basically the RPG elements that are the role-playing elements, as opposed to the RPG elements that are the statistic numbers that go up that make your gooby brain feel happy. That's the thing where it's like a lot of people are focusing on the wrong side of RPG, as opposed to the side that, not the wrong side, but one side, not the other one. Well, yeah, it's like, what is RPG? Is that a emotion? Is that an experience that the player has? Or is that a set of game design tools to create treadmills? Yeah, too often it's the latter. Is that God of War having gear for some reason? Which I think undoubtedly made it a worse game. Yep, for sure. I'd still think it's insane that they put a gear system in God of War. I can't understand it. Mm-hmm. Then also the people want, they want personal meaning in their experience and their journey, and they want that to feel at least a little bit unique to them, which essentially is going to mean a bit more of the non-linearity. You can explore the world, find out things in different order yourself in a way that is self-directed, rather than just, go through the objective list. You're done.
Yeah, it's like do things in different order that in a way that feels meaningful to you, and some of that will be helped by not having a like a I don't want to be too harsh, but like movie main character, movie protagonist story, where it's like, yeah, you're playing Aloy. How unique can your experience be with Aloy playing Forbidden West? Obviously, it's fine to have that. Like, hey, we've got a protagonist. That's obviously completely fine. But I think people are a little bit more hungry for the no. I want to have a more unique experience. I don't want to be told a story. I want to experience a story or live a story out. I think that's one of the major things people could be taking away.
Yeah. Now, what's going to matter, I think, a lot is how these things are used, and I think going to some interview quotes from Miyazaki is decently important. So here's two that I think go together well. This gave the things in the world the depth and weight of history, which can be seen in things like the designs of important enemies, the map, and NPCs. And then the second one is just saying that the storytelling is the same as Dark Souls, with the intention being for players to piece the various different fragments together or imagine what happened themselves. And the reason there is because they want the actual gameplay to be the player's story. And those are things that basically just work perfectly in unison.
Yep, it's like you feel like you're an archaeologist putting stuff together, and you're doing it entirely by yourself. Obviously, you can just go and look at lore YouTubers, which is fine, but it's the kind of thing that the feeling of satisfaction of, like, I think I said it before here, but like figuring out like, oh, that's the rotten crystal sword. Wait, the crystals can rot. Holy shit. What does that mean? That stuff happens in your head as you're playing. You find out little things like, something happens and opens up this entire underground layer of the map, and you kind of figure out, oh, how did this end up down here? Why is this down here? What are, basically the way it's designed is every enemy you can think, why is that enemy here? And you just stop to look at the enemy and go, what are you wearing? Why are you wearing it? Your attack patterns are similar to another enemy. What does that mean? And that's you're inspired to put all that stuff together because of how it's presented.
And that's what he even speaks to, saying that the skills, sorceries, incantations, and weapons are created with the idea that they are things from mythology or made to go up against heroes of mythology. Mm-hmm. That's how to do it, so that like the story is a thing you literally play. Did you like actually feel in your own button presses instead of just, you listen to the story or you read the story and then after that you do your button pressy bit. Which, I mean, in fairness, a game like Horizon can also successfully do some of that when you're having some of the gameplay like with the big mechanical beasts.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally does evoke, a hunt.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing where Horizon does that actually quite well sometimes, like the earlier bit about like putting pieces together in the world, where there's in Forbidden West, there's this, I can't remember exactly how they're pronounced, but 10 is a central theme of like this tribe and everything they do. And they're like really like proudly militaristic. And then you find out, and this isn't a big revelation that like characters comment on, it's like you put the pieces together as you're going along, and then it's like, when you're expected to understand it, they kind of openly talk about it, but it's like it's an old military term, or it's like an old military unit that are called I think they're the JTF-10, and they all are like, all of these characters have been saying on the wings of the 10 for so many years, or for so many hours of gameplay. You're like, I wonder what that could mean. And then it turns out there's this aerial task unit that they really revere through finding archaeological dig stuff. You're like, that's really cool, and that's honestly super cool, but that's the whole experience of everything in Elden Ring, as opposed to one small part of like Forbidden West. And I think that's the stuff that goes exceedingly well. But the point of like mythology and all that stuff, there's so much they do with not telling you the whole story or trusting you to make stuff up in your own head. Or the way I describe it is, a lot of bosses have one really, really fundamental like thing that defines them. And that is such like a mythic data point that you can extrapolate the rest. Like, there's this boss that uses gravity magic. His name is Star Scourge. And you find something that I don't actually want to say, it was a bit of a spoiler, but like the item you get from beating him, the explanation for that, or the item description tells you a specific point of his history. Something that happens after he dies as well ties all into this thing where you're like, this is just the story of a demigod. This is something you would read on Wikipedia about like an old mythical figure and go, holy shit. But you piece together the rest, you just imagine these incredible, just these massive more than life characters, because there's just a couple little data points and they trust you to fill in the rest yourself. And it's all designed for that. It's designed for that to feel massive and feel huge, and it works.
I think it's one of the things that makes books really strong.
Yeah,
You got to do a lot of heavy lifting when you're reading a book.
yeah.
It kind of relies on your imagination.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the reasons why like a book can really, a book can really hit someone.
Yeah.
When you get the experience of a true, I don't mean a page turner in the way that sometimes people would use that with a negative connotation, but like when you're totally gripped by a book, and it's like so much of that's because it's been so richly, vividly built up in your own head with your imagination. It's like you and the book creating the story together. In how the experience of the story, and I think the generally less prescriptive and far more, this is mythology, what does it mean, you think about it, just means that Elden Ring is able to just have their players do a little bit more of the heavy lifting in a way where their experience is just more unique to them because of who they are as an individual. What cultural experiences they've had, and how that actually colors how they perceive the game and how they think about the world, instead of it just being, here is a real, bam, here's a story. Do you like the story? Do you not like the story? Do you think it was well acted, etc.? Where that's more just like sort of presenting you a thing. Do you like it? It's not really inviting you in a shared journey in the way that just a fundamental sort of storytelling like this does.
Yeah, I mean, here's the difference really boiled down. Elden Ring and the Souls game and Miyazaki, that's Miyazaki inviting you to a D&D campaign and you play with him. Obviously not literally, of course. And the way a lot of AAA games are, they tell you a story. They're you sitting down to watch a Critical Role video. They're not you sitting down to play D&D. That's fundamentally the difference. There's some interactivity. Maybe you get to vote on some choices in in that context of watching someone else play D&D. But it's like the whole point is you're invited along and you get to engage with it and create your own meaning out of it. And that's just the thing that obviously it's not for everyone, it's not for every game, but I hope that's what people can, or the executives and designers can understand. That's why people love it so much, because they're not used to this feeling and they get to actually live something.
Yeah. How can you invite your player along in such a deep way? And what I really love is as you got more evangelical, the sunlight behind you got more extreme and like backlit your hair. So that's pretty awesome. But look, there you go. So Elden Ring, the news bit, 12 million sales in barely any time. That's mad. Also, surprisingly unfinished for a few quest lines, but that's something that they are working on. And, what could this do for the industry? Dark Souls changed a few things. And while this is very much in the Dark Souls lineage, it's bringing something a bit more new and different in the open world. The open world, I think, is one of the points where I think a large plurality of gamers will agree that open worlds are getting more and more stagnant. They can be executed so well that it feels good, even though there are inherent downsides. I think Tsushima and Forbidden West are like both examples of that.
Both
to be
exceptional games.
But this is maybe showing, hey, this is a step change. This is fundamentally different in a novel way. So I want to know, how will that impact? How will it impact games going forward? There's no way to know until years happen. But let me know what you think. And I suppose with that.
Yeah, I mean, there is the only way to know, honestly, is from. That's why we include the other trends part in this video, because if you're looking at history, most things will just copy it without really understanding why, and sometimes it works, sometimes it won't.
Yeah, well, let's hope it does.
Yep.
Because I would be very much down for the open world genre getting a big shot of life back in it.
Damn straight.
Anyway, that's it for me. Goodbye.